Baybayin is an ancient alpha-syllabic script, or abugida, that was used by pre-Hispanic Filipinos. Called Kuritan and Kulitan in the north, Guhit or Basahan in Bicol, and Surat Binisaya in Visayas, it belongs to a family of related Filipino scripts that has its origins in the Indigenized kingdoms of Southeast Asia in the Middle Ages. But many Filipinos mistakenly call Baybayin as Alibata, which originated from the false idea that the script came from Arabic, hence its name from the first 3 Arabic letters. For more in-depth commentary and a list of sources used in this video, check out the link in the description below to listen to the podcast episode where I dive deeper into this topic. Since there are numerous versions of Baybayin out there, from the so-called B17, B17+, B18, and so on, the historical Baybayin, or B17 and B17+, or to be more pedantic, the Doctrina 1593 and Lopez 6020 versions shall be used for the purposes of this video, that these were the versions used in historical texts such as the Doctrina Christiana, the longest and most elaborate authentic Baybayin text currently existing. In Baybayin, there are 3 voweled characters and 14 consonant characters. Placing vowels in consonants is by the use of a vowel marker or kudlit. No kudlit will be placed if the consonant has the vowel a, whereas the kudlit will be placed above the consonant when the vowel it is using is pronounced between e or e, and the kudlit is placed below the consonant when it is between o or u. The voweled characters are used if the syllable is solely a vowel. The character for the consonant D is sometimes used interchangeably for the consonant R, as it is common for Filipino words such as in Tagalog to change from D to R and vice versa. Some versions of Baybayin, such as in Bicol, had a separate character for R by adding an additional stroke to the consonant D. Other consonants of the modern alphabet such as C, F, J, Q, X, and Z, or Z for British speakers, don't have an equivalent in the historical Baybayin. Despite some of these letters appearing in historical texts such as the Doctrina, this was mainly the result of the use of the Latin alphabet in both Spanish and Tagalog. So if one wants to write the word bundok or mountain, it is written historically as budo without the N and K consonants. In later versions of Baybayin, cross-shaped vowel cancellation markers or cruz kudlit are being added, such as in this Ilocano version of the Doctrina, authored by Father Francisco Lopez in 1620. In this bundok example, it can now be written like this. But its use was too unwieldy for Filipinos, and that according to them, it was contrary to the intrinsic character and nature which God had given it. In writing Baybayin, the general rule of thumb is, how you say it is how you write it, or in Tagalog, kung anong bigkas siyang baybay. But due to the number of Tagalog dialects, and the fact that there are numerous Philippine languages apart from Tagalog, this rule of thumb can be a bit difficult to follow. For convenience, many Baybayin enthusiasts use the old Abacada alphabet as their phonetic guide. And for names such as Karaig, Fabian, Juan, Kisimbing, Javier, and Ilagan, they are often abacadized and converted to Baybayin soon after. Historically, they were written without standalone consonants, but modern enthusiasts used other historical versions such as the Lopez 1620 or the Bicol version to include these cancelled consonants and other characters. For more difficult, mostly Anglo-American names like Jasmine, Christian, or Grace, there are 2 options that one may follow. Either Philippinize the name and follow the rule of thumb, or only follow the rule of thumb. For the first one, it would go along the lines of Yasmin, Christian, and Gracia, which are phonetically close. For the second one, this would be a bit difficult, as these names have no equivalent sounds in Baybayin, much less in any Philippine language. But for the purposes of this video, it would go something like these characters. Baybayin is written from left to right and historically without spaces, in which, though common in most Asian scripts, makes reading it difficult for the untrained eye. To remedy this, two lines, or danda, are placed after each word. It is a punctuation mark commonly found in Indic writing systems, which serves to distinguish words from each other, making it easier to read. But to what extent it must be used is still debated. Analysis from the Doctrina shows that segments averaging 5 to 7 syllables are found to have a danda being written. This is attested to the fact that traditional Tagalog poetry had the same length of syllables, such as in the poem May Bagyumat May Ririm. Baybayin's exact origins are hotly contested, with theories such as it came from Sumatra or from Sulawesi via trade routes in Southeast Asia, or that it evolved from the Kawi script found in the 900-year-old Laguna copperplate inscription. As for the script's geographical distribution, it reached all the way to Visayas, as described in the Visayan grammar book, although it states that the Visayans have some letters with different shapes, but even they themselves do not agree on the shapes of their letters. One infamous feature of Baybayin is its inability to have vowel-removed consonants, which makes deciphering the script quite difficult, even for experienced translators. As noted by Father Gaspar de San Agustin, in Baybayin, transcriptions such as lili could either mean any of the following, and one had to supply missing consonants by context. Even in vowels, it is difficult to distinguish whether the text used a or e and o or u, such as in the bundok example, where it can also be read as either budu, bodu, or bodo. Thus, according to accounts by religious clerics such as Father Francisco Alcina, Baybayin was considered very difficult to read. Father Pedro Chirino in the Boxer Codex added that Baybayin and other Filipino scripts were used solely for writing letters to one another and crafting incantations to ward off evil spirits, rarely for other literary purposes like poetry. Despite these deficiencies, both Alcina and Chirino admitted that there are those who can read it with proficiency and without stumbling. French linguist Jean-Paul Potet agrees with this assessment in that a Baybayin text is in general comprehensible for someone with the habit of reading it. At the start of the Spanish period, Filipinos started recording in their characters or letters their properties, financial transactions, and the teachings of the Catholic Church, which culminated in the now famous Doctrina Cristiana, or Christian Doctrine in English. The Doctrina Cristiana is a book printed in 1593, designed by Franciscan and Dominican missionaries, but handmade by Chinese woodblock printers. It consists of two versions, one written in classical Chinese for Hokkien Chinese speakers, and the other written for Tagalogs. For the latter, it is a bilingual book written in Spanish and Tagalog and divided into three parts. First, in Spanish, written in the Latin alphabet, second in Tagalog, written in the same script, and third in Tagalog, written in Baybayin. It consists of various texts containing prayers, creeds, declarations, and other religious teachings. Altogether, the book has 76 pages. Although the texts mirror each other for the most part, some differences prove that neither is a completely faithful version of the other, with either Baybayin Tagalog texts being more faithful to the Spanish version than the Latinized Tagalog version, or sometimes the opposite. There are even sections of the book in which it contains typographical errors. Some words in the Doctrina contain concepts that either do not have an exact pre-colonial Tagalog equivalent or no meaning at all. But despite its deficiencies, the Doctrina is an excellent example of a Baybayin text, as it is generally consistent in its themes and features. Even with attempts by the Spanish clergy to use it in their evangelization of the natives, it quickly fell out of use by the general population with the introduction of the Latin alphabet due to its practicality, the range of phonology that it has, and the prestige in its usage, as noted by Father Chirino, in that the Filipinos were quick to learn the alphabet. Although some outliers still existed, such as in Batangas, where it was used to write poetry as recorded by Father San Agustin in 1703. In some Spanish documents, Filipinos used Baybayin when signing their names, even as late as 1792 when a pact was signed in Baybayin between the Christians and the Mangyans. But in 1745, Father Sebastian Totanes claimed that there are only a few natives who still know how to read and write the characters, as most of them are well versed in the Latin alphabet. To quote Father Totanes, "Rare is the Indio who still knows how to read Baybayin, much less write them. All of them read and write our Castilian letters now." The lack of any pre-Hispanic documents written in Baybayin puzzle many historians even to this day, with Dr. H. Otley Bayer claiming that one unnamed Spanish clergyman boasted to have destroyed 300 scrolls written in the native character. Historians have yet to find any proof of this, as there were no written records by any chroniclers that the natives were writing in scrolls. One probable reason as to why there were no pre-Hispanic documents in Baybayin is due to the fact that, as previously mentioned, ancient Filipinos mostly write personal letters, and that they were written in perishable materials such as leaves and bamboo strips, as seen in with what the Mangyan are doing now. But the fact that the natives see the practicality and prestige of using the Latin alphabet, adding with the religious evangelization by the clergy, and the harsh imposition of tribute and forced labor, it resulted to most of them becoming illiterate in their ancient script, thereby endangering most of their oral traditions. But with regards to the Baybayin script itself, the Spanish clergy have gone great lengths to preserve it, even if it fell out of use by Filipinos. Over time, some regional variants of the Baybayin script have been developed, with the Tagbanwa script used by the Tagbanwa in Palawan, albeit rarely, and the Buhid and Hanuno'o scripts of Mindoro used by the Mangyan. At the end of the 19th century and the rise of the propaganda movement in the Philippines, there was a resurgence of the use of Baybayin, with figures such as Jose Rizal and Trinidad Pardo de Tavera emphasizing the scientific, historical, and pragmatic value of Baybayin studies. Other figures such as Isabelo de los Reyes and Pedro Paterno started a mystical and cultural rebirth of Baybayin, with revolutionaries such as Andres Bonifacio spearheading its political use. The ancient script was embraced by Bonifacio's revolutionary group, the Katipunan, as a symbol of national identity and proof of pre-colonial greatness, and that, according to this essay, ang dapat mapatid ng mga Tagalog, young and old, even the women of pre-colonial times, could read and write in the genuine Tagalog way of writing. One particular of note was the use of the Baybayin character Ka, as the letter K was one of the proposals of Rizal to indigenize Filipino orthography away from the complicated Spanish writing system or abecedario. The Katipunan's usage of the script paved the way for future nationalist and political organizations in identifying themselves with the Katipunan's continuous struggle, often calling the script Sulat Bayani or the hero script. Even during the American colonial period and the ban of Filipino nationalist symbols, references of Baybayin can still be seen in plays such as in Aurelio Tolentino's Kahapon, Ngayon, at Bukas. Baybayin was soon used by various groups, from guerrilla forces and Japanese collaborators during the Second World War to leftist militants such as the youth organization Kabataang Makabayan, founded by Jose Maria Sison. The flag of the organization contains the Baybayin letter Ka, and according to Sison, not only it signifies the Katipunan legacy, but it also bears a striking resemblance to the Chinese character for labor, referencing the Maoist teachings of a workers' revolution. Other activist organizations followed suit, such as Armas or Artista at Manunulat ng Sambayanan, Anak Bayan, and the Kabataan Party List. Apart from militant groups, government organizations also use Baybayin in their official seals and logos, such as by the Armed Forces of the Philippines, in the logo of the Cultural Center of the Philippines, where it represents katotohanan, kagandahan, kabutihan, in official documents such as passports, where it quotes a biblical passage in Tagalog, in Philippine peso bills with the inscription Filipino, and even in medals such as the Order of La Candula. Baybayin has seen a renewed interest in recent years, as Filipinos, especially those in overseas like Filipino Americans, are finding ways to preserve their cultural heritage, in particular through artistic interpretations in logos, calligraphy, or tattoos, and even the commercialization of the script in shirts and other paraphernalia. This comes from the realization that neighboring Asian nations such as China, Taiwan, Korea, Japan, and other ASEAN member states have their own writing system and yet still finding ways to preserve them. Extensive Baybayin studies are being conducted not only by local academics, but also by foreign enthusiasts and linguists such as those by Paul Morrow and Jean-Paul Potet. And artifacts with Baybayin inscriptions are being discovered, such as the Katagan pot inscription and Monreal or Ticao stones, but are yet subject for further study. Modern concepts are being introduced in Baybayin, such as standardized typography, the inclusion of new characters, the use of spaces between words, and the writing of single-line danda as a comma. Baybayin fonts and keyboards are now available in most operating systems like Windows, Android, and Apple, and can be easily downloaded online. Some renowned Filipinos, like the journalist Howie Severino, wrote in his article that he uses Baybayin in his personal written records such as diaries, and that he goes to great lengths in using his platform to spread it to the masses, even using the script to communicate with his colleagues. Social media groups and pages are being established for the teaching of Baybayin online, with the largest having more than 800,000 members in Facebook as of the making of this video. In Congress, House Bill 6069, or the Philippine Indigenous and Traditional Writing Systems Act, calls for the inclusion of Baybayin and other indigenous texts in the Philippine educational curriculum and to, quote, generate greater awareness of indigenous and traditional scripts of the Philippines as part of our cultural treasures. As of the 28th of November 2022, the bill has passed its second reading and is now on queue for its third and final reading. There's also a growing debate in the Filipino online sphere with regards to the implementation of Baybayin in everyday usage, with one side favoring this proposal as they argue that it is for the strengthening of Filipino culture as advocated by past historical figures. Others are not convinced, as according to them, it is a waste of time and resources to be implemented and too impractical in the modern age, as attested by the number of Filipinos during the Spanish period who switched to the Latin alphabet for social expediency. But whether Baybayin will be widely implemented or not in the future, the script is here to stay and will forever be part of the Filipino cultural sphere for generations to come. If you enjoyed the video and want to support the channel, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to stay updated. You can also support the channel on Patreon or donate via Ko-fi, as it helps the channel in creating more educational content like this. And with that out of the way, thank you very much for watching, have a good day, and I'll see you in the next one.